Peace be. And now Don is going to talk to us about connecting through social power, working together. And if I didn't text, I'd probably never, ever, ever hear from my kids or grandkids. So it's never too old. You're never too old to learn to do these things.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start first with I'd like to play a piece. It's a spoken word by a man named Sully Breaks, and I'd just like to say ahead of time, it is a very thick British accent with a tinge of an urban feel to it. So it might be hard to pick up at first, but don't worry. I just wanted to do a disclaimer ahead of time going, I can't understand anything. But go ahead.
Revolution and represent 107.3 FM. My name is Tariq. Now, listeners, you may remember not too long ago we had a spoken word artist by the name of Sully Breaks. Came down, dropped a live session, and a lot of you were excited about that. I was excited this morning when I opened up a package, had no idea what it was. Opened it up, put it in the player, pressed play, and it totally blew me away. It's his brand new piece from his brand new The Dorm Room EP. I'm gonna have to let spoken word do what it does best and let it speak for itself. Brand new Sully Breaks.
Right now, there is a kid finishing parents' evening in a heated discussion with his mother, saying, why does he have to study subjects he will never ever use in his life? And she will look at him blank-eyed, stifle a sigh, think for a second, and then lie. She'll say something along the lines of, you know, to get a good job you need a good degree, and these subjects will help you get a good degree. We never had this opportunity when I was younger. And he will reply, but you were young a long time ago, weren't you, Mum? And she won't respond, although what he implies makes perfect sense, that society's needs would have changed since she was 16. But she will ignore him, grip his hand more sternly, then drag him to the car. But what she doesn't know is that she didn't ignore him just to shut him up. She didn't lie because they were just returning from parents' evening and an argument in the hallway would look bad on her resume. She won't lie because she's just spent the last 1 hour convincing a stern-faced teacher that she will ensure that her child studies more at home. No, she will lie simply because she does not know any better herself. Although her whole adult life she has never used or applied Pythagoras' theorem, pathetic fallacy, and still does not know the value of x, she will rely on society to tell her that her child, who has one of the sharpest minds in the school, is hyperactive, unfocused, easily distracted, and wayward. Students, how many equations, subjects, and dates did you memorize just before an exam never to use again? How many A grades did you get which were never asked for when you applied for a job? How many times have you remembered something 5 minutes just after the teacher said stop writing, only to receive your results 1 month later to realize that you were only 1 mark short of the top grade? Does that mean remembering 5 minutes earlier would have made you more qualified for a particular job? Well, on the application form it would have. We all have different abilities, thought processes, experiences, and genes. So why is a class full of individuals tested by the same means? So does that mean Sherelle thinks she's dumb because she couldn't do a couple of sums? And if this issue is not addressed properly, it then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then every school has the audacity to have a policy on equality. The irony. Exams are society's methods of telling you what you're worth. But you can't let society tell you what you are, because it's the same society that tells you that abortion is wrong but then looks down on teenage parents. The same society that sells products to promote natural hair, looks and smooth complexion, with the model on the box half photoshopped and has fake lashes and hair extensions, with pastors that preach charity but own private jets, imams that preach against greed but are all fat, parents that say they want educated kids but constantly marvel at how rich Richard Branson is, governments that preach peace but endorse wars, that say they believe so much in the importance of higher education and further learning, then why increase tuition fees every single year? I believe Miss Jefferson when she took me into the office and said that my exams would be imperative to my success. Because we was taught to always follow when Miss Jefferson led. But then I took Jefferson out of the equation and learned to think for myself. I realized we was taught to always follow when Miss led. The irony. Test us with tests, but the finals are never final, cause they never prepare us for the biggest test, which is survival. And what I suggest is fairly outlandish, so I do not expect everyone to understand this, except for the kids who knows what it feels like to be worth no more than that D or that A that you get on results day, and the ones whose best stories were never good enough for the English teacher, cause apparently you missed out key literal techniques, did not follow the class plan, and the language was too informal for him to understand. But then he'd reference Hamlet and Macbeth, and you'd fight the urge to express your contempt by partially clenching your fist with only your medius finger left protruding in the middle of your hand, and then asked if he was aware that Shakespeare was known as the innovator of slang, or the kid at the back of the class who thinks, why am I studying something that doesn't fuel my drive? But then when confronted with a maths problem, his eyes come alive. So this one is for my generation, the ones who found what they were looking for on Google, the ones who followed their dreams on Twitter, pictured their future on Instagram, accepted destiny on Facebook. This one's for my failures and my dropouts, for my unemployed graduates, my shop assistants, cleaners and cashiers with bigger dreams, my self-employed entrepreneurs, my world changers and my dream chasers, because the purpose of why I hate school but love education was not to initiate a worldwide debate, but to let them know that whether 72 or 88, 44 or 68, we will not let exam results decide our fate. Peace. Just these pictures.
Now, I know that seemed a little hard, a little dark, but that is the plight we're finding, like my generation, the younger kids, they're finding themselves in. I was in a discussion this very morning about a friend of mine who is deciding to go back to a non-smartphone. She's mentioning she's just tired of a glow being constantly distracted. And that, of course, is what our parents have been telling us for years. But there are a lot of these things that we end up having to find out on our own. I guess that's just how it works. Our parents did it too. Like, their parents told them, you look out for this. But we all kind of have to make our own way, somehow. And we're in a place right now where we have generations of people who have started this current world that we know, and then the younger group that is now, like, I was raised on Nintendo. Video games have always been a thing to me. Like, video games and this technology will always be a thing to our children, but we're experiencing a technological gap. We have people who are, like, in the older generations that are still learning these new technologies. And a lot of us that are my age still don't even know how to use their smartphones. Like, integrating your calendars and making all these tools that are wonderful to use are also very overwhelming, because sometimes it is very important just to get out there, just to actually touch the physical world and not always be into the digital realm. I am a huge advocate of digital technology. I kind of make my money doing things digitally. So it's very important to me, and I see the benefits, but I also understand how important it is to have this. We could do this in a Google Hangout. We could no longer have church and just everybody fire up Google, log in, and we could do this all from the comforts of our home. But we miss something. But we also have that technology there for a purpose. If we're using this technology like our ancestors used the hammer, could we imagine a world that didn't have wheeled vehicles? We can't. When the arguments nowadays about all the different renewable energies, the solars, the wind, all of that is being argued and fought against by the oil companies, who are also an energy company. So there's always transition, So I'm sure the horse-drawn carriage companies were really upset when the Model T came out. And I'm sure there were huge arguments going on. Well, all these people are going to lose a job. And they're like, well, yeah. But instead of building carts, they can now build cars. Instead of blowing up our mountains, we can be installing solar panels. We can be installing wind turbines. We could be doing tiny things like just replacing our power poles with wind turbines. Small things. Always being flexible is something that moves us forward. But as we get older, we become more conservative. Things start disappearing around us. Like where the world used to feel in abundance, and now our friends are passing away, our parents have passed away, and we very understandably want to start holding on to the little sometimes that we have left. But what we have to be cautious of is overshadowing that young, naive growth. Those crazy, wild ideas that may very possibly turn into absolute disaster on the short term. Maybe, a fire, But we learn, we grow, we develop these things by going, what if? And then also learning how to use their technologies. Arab Spring was a wonderful example of using modern technology, using Twitter and the social media to unify these people. I went to Richmond January 20th to advocate marijuana reform. And we got there by using email blasts, Facebook. There's a website called Eventbrite where you just set up your page, and it allows you to print off tickets for people. You can even determine a price. And so you can now have your next event with printable tickets to be checked in at the door. These are tools available, and we use those, and we started with a threshold of 50 folks, thinking, you know what, if we get 50 people here, this was kind of by the seat of our pants to begin with, so we have 50 people to show up, we'll consider this a win. Well, within 3 days, I had to change the threshold to 75. 3 days later, I had to bump it up to 100. We finally went to a 125 and we stopped. We were like, we can't control any more people. We weren't really prepared for this. So we had, and of course we knew not everybody was going to show up, but we ended up having 60 people there. And there was also a group there specifically targeting the medicinal aspects, safe access, and then there's a student group called Students for Sensible Drug Policy. So we had these 3 groups that were all there for most of the same reason, but for different reasons. The training the previous Saturday was hosted by the medicinal group, and I was able to meet some wonderful people, old and young, that were all there to defend and encourage marijuana reform from the medicinal aspects. And we're talking about not just joints, to heal your joint pain, but we're talking about the cannabinoids that can actually extract, the THC is extracted, and it's just the cannabinoids, and it's an amazing seizure reduction compound. There was a mother-daughter team there that was representing their brother and son who has been on life support 13 times in the last year from seizures. 50 to 70 seizures a day. And cannabinoids will reduce that down to possibly 10 a week. But we're having to go and change these people's minds, and they're stuck in these mindsets that it's illegal because it's illegal, and that's the way it's always been. That's the way it was when I was a kid. That's just the way it is. But when we become stagnant like that, and we have those arguments of, well, that's the way it was when we were there, we don't grow. Things have to be flexible. We have to have all the people engaged together, collectively, in realizing that we all have a place and a participation in the entire workings. And going to the state capitol was eye-opening. They told me that I was going to be speaking to delegates, and I was like, do you think that's a good idea? Like, you must not know me. And so I was like, I was a bit concerned myself, like here I'm in the state capitol, and if I say the wrong thing, I could find myself in a lot of trouble. But they're just people. I spoke with Israel O'Quinn, and we had a nice 10-minute conversation. He was very interested in hemp, and was also impressed that I had my laptop open, and I had the Virginia law out, and he was even unaware of some of the ways that marijuana was written into the Virginia state law. It is the only plant that is mentioned, the salts, the stalk, the stem, the seed, every element is explicitly mentioned as illegal in the Virginia statute. The coca plant isn't even that regulated. So we're having these dialogues and these discussions, and there's people who are in their 60s, there were people that were in their 20s, and we were all there together for mostly the same reason, but as I mentioned earlier, we had 3 different groups there. And so we all went, and we all had our own specific targets. Well, very quickly I realized how foolish it was that here we are representing NORML, so we're for full legalization, and then we have a medicinal group, and then we have a student group who's really looking for amnesty for overdose. That was their big push that day, is to ensure that if somebody has a friend who decides to do something foolish, with heroin being on the rise, that they could be safe to call and seek help for their friend without being criminally liable themselves. So 3 very important things socially, but in the grand scheme of things, whether or not marijuana is legalized or not, really doesn't affect the entire world, but it affects a lot of people's lives, and we are running into these situations where people who are against it are making no room to try things differently. We had to sit for 3 hours in a congressional hearing in one of the subcommittees to make sure that a bill that was basically gutting the 1979 medicinal bill to make it completely illegal was done, to preemptively keep any new legislation coming in. And so we sat for 3 hours to get an opportunity to speak out against this, and we stopped that bill. But the very next week, the amnesty bill was also killed for reasons that their answer was they were afraid that would give heroin dealers an out. And just excuses. It comes a time, when you're in a certain level of authority position, you don't want things to change. And that's a wonderful way for certain aspects, but we have to have room on the other end of those new ideas and feelings to come in. And it starts with actually getting involved. Just if we spent 5 minutes a week sending an email to our congressman, regardless of what it is. Because we have people that are representing us right now that do not represent us. We have, on a good year, the best year we've ever had for actual election turnouts in the United States is 1960, and we had 63.1% of eligible voters voting. 2012, 53.6% of eligible voters showed up. And those are the big elections. Those are the ones that everybody talks about, everybody hears things about, and we barely got half out. During midterm elections, 2010 was 37.8. 2006, 37.1. 2002, 37.0. There's not a lot of turnout. So we have a system, an electoral system that is there that nobody is using. We are not calling our congressmen. We are not showing up at their local offices and saying, "Hi, my name is Don Hill, and I am one of your constituents, and this is how I feel about this." And they'll listen to you. But most of us don't even know who our congressmen or congresswomen are. Like, if that's midterm elections with an average of 37%, local elections are less than that. So you have people getting elected in your local offices by 400 votes. And that bothers me. And that bothers me especially in a day and age where we have access to information. And that if we're not just using it to watch cat videos, they're great, don't get me wrong. You know, I can have cheeseburgers. I loved visiting Cracked. That's a website, not a drug. But it feels like it sometimes. We have access to the information. In fact, I would like to play a very quick game to see who's engaged. I'm going to read a little blurb from a newsletter that I've signed up for, and I want you to guess who it is. Opening in California earlier this month was the giant Ivanpah solar electric generating system, which the Wall Street Journal reports includes 3 towers as tall as 40-story buildings, nearly 350,000 mirrors, each the size of a garage door, reflect sunlight onto boilers atop the towers, creating steam that drives power generators. And then the Wall Street Journal, Huffington Post, International Business Time, and Fox are then cited. The International Business Time notes, Western Watershed Project filed a lawsuit against the BLM in management in January of 2011, alleging it had failed to protect more than 1,000 desert tortoises, along with birds and sheep. A California district court tossed out the case in November, and 2 weeks ago, Western Watersheds restated its pleas to the U.S. Ninth Court of Appeals. A birder myself, I too think this ought to be reviewed. As U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Regional Director for Migratory Birds, Eric Davis said, when you have new technologies, you don't know what the impacts are going to be. But I couldn't help but think of a few headlines of my own. Birds fried in the sky, hot suspect, green energy. Environmentalists oppose solar supersite. Green energy facility ruffling feathers. Environmentalists watching Ivanpah like hawks. Solar supersite swan song? Do you have ideas? Feel free to send them my way, because folks, you just can't make this stuff up. Does anybody have an idea? You're cheating. That is U.S. Congressman Morgan Griffith, representing Virginia's 9th District. This is his newsletter. This is last week's newsletter. And almost every single one of them is like that. Like, it is all hyperbolic. It is all slanderous. And then every single time I get this, every time I see representing Virginia's 9th, it causes me to see red, because he does not represent me at all. In no shape, fashion, or form does he represent me. Nor do I think he would be representing many of you in this room right now. Like, not in this way. This isn't how our Congress people should be representing us. If they run around saying, this is what my constituents say, they sure didn't talk to me. But we have delegates and we have congressmen that we have elected are, by not showing up, allowed to be elected year in and year out. When you divide the 2012 election by age groups, you have 19% of the vote was done by 18 to 29-year-olds. 27% was done by the 30 to 44 group. 45 to 64 was the 38% group, and then 65 and over was only 16% of the vote. So, the 45 to 64 are the ones who are going out more to state their opinion. That 18 to 29 and that 65 and over number, those are terrible, because this is just a percentage of the people who actually showed up. So we're already at just over half of the available electoral group. And then only 19% of that is the 18 to 29 group. It was not, voting wasn't talked about in my house. Like, we didn't, if I heard my mom ever speak of it, it was more along the lines of, your voice doesn't matter. Like, why bother? But if we continue to think that way, while avoiding this modern technology and the ability to bring us together, in this room to actually have dialogue, which is really where it comes down to. Having dialogue, having conversations, keeping your friends from saying some pretty ridiculous things. Most of the time, if it's written in all caps, I can go to Snopes and find out that it's wrong. It's really, try it. If you see something in all caps, it's probably false. And it's simple things like that is learning to find those things on the internet that are tugging your heartstrings and honing in on those feelings you already have. Well, that's not what the internet is for. That's not what information is for us to just cherry pick and just say, well, yeah, see, look, the Christians are doing something ridiculous too. Well, yeah, well, you're right. You're going to find whatever you're looking for. But it's the encouragement of dialogue together. The recognition that we are all here. All of us have our strengths. All of us have our weaknesses. All of us have our abilities. But we're all adults together. Whether you're 18, because I think if they are willing to give you a gun at 18, you definitely should be encouraged to use your voice. But we all have to be treated as adults. We all have to recognize that if you have a situation where a younger person is airing a grievance of saying, well, this is terrible and this is what I'm feeling right now, when we keep saying, well, that's what I had to deal with when I was your age too, how many generations are we going to allow that to happen? So the dam finally breaks. Until, where we keep allowing growth to happen, but we go, well, you know what? Let's do this. You're right. Let's change these laws. But let's wait till 2025 before we apply them. Let's give you time to adjust. Well, what happens is we just keep making decisions and then setting them for somebody later to figure out. I want to create a world that is better for my children. I want my children to be smarter and better than I ever will be. And I'm okay with that. I want a world where my kids can laugh at the fact that some of the struggles we were having with LGBT rights. The fact that, we grew up in mixed schools. And that was a huge change. That was just second nature. That, all races were equal at our school. That didn't happen a generation before. So we're constantly moving forward. We're constantly changing, but some of these things, like these social things, are more affected, or younger people are more affected by some of these social laws that we're having. In your 70s, you're probably not very much on the market of looking to get married, consistently. But in your 20s, no offense. Exceptions to all rules. But I imagine that market's pretty thin at 70, yeah? So at 20, that's a very different story. When the FBI stats say that you are 35% more likely to be arrested for a drug offense than a DUI, drug laws affect younger people more directly. And we keep finding no room to be recognized as such without a huge hee-haw fight. And I don't know, I guess I wish we could find a way around that to where we're not telling our children generation after generation, yeah, that's what I dealt with too. It's terrible, I know, but them's the breaks. When does it finally break?